The NFL season starts this week, and I have a bunch of reasons to be pumped about this Minnesota Vikings season, and I'm going to share them with you. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. You guys make the world go around, especially those of you who are on YouTube and you watch the video instead of just angrily responding to the title. And we can say anything we want about that latter group of people because they're not watching. It's real great. So thank you all so much for coming and hanging out. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Here's what we're going to do today. Today is going to be the positive case for the Minnesota Vikings. Every reason that we have to believe in them, to think that they're going to hit their overs on their win totals, make the playoffs, maybe even make some noise, really, maybe even challenge for the Super Bowl. This is going to be the unabashed positive case. And I truly believe quite a bit of it, but even stuff that I don't necessarily agree with, still going to lay out. This is for those of you who are maybe just tuning in, who weren't really around all offseason. You don't pay attention to the draft, free agency, or anything like that. And you're going, who are all these new guys? Why should I believe in the Vikings? This is for you. Tomorrow is Town Hall Tuesday. That means I will be answering your questions and responding to your hot takes. So if you have something you would like to ask me, or a hot take you would like to confess anonymously, and I will protect your anonymity but react to it on the show, you can put it in the Google form, which is linked in the show notes or YouTube description of any podcast episode. I'll make a separate one for bold predictions, by the way, and that'll be in the descriptions soon because we will have to do our bold predictions. We'll probably do Sunday or our Monday show will be bold predictions for both the Chicago game and like all of the season, because I still haven't done the season long ones, but I want to give you all as much time as possible. Then on Wednesday, we'll do the opposite of today's show with the negative case for the Vikings. You know, what the concerns, things we're worried about, why we shouldn't get our hopes up, right? Because you all love to chew on that like it's like you're tigers in a cage and I just threw a steak down there. And then Thursday will be crossover Thursday. Friday, we will do all the normal kind of show preview stuff. There's over under like we did last year. That's going to be back. Very excited about all of that. But today, it's all about the positivity, baby. And I was thinking to myself, okay, what's the main reason that I'm pumped about this Vikings season? Because I really am. I am stoked on the Vikings. God help me. But I see what they did last year. I see the changes that they've made, and they've gotten worse in some places and better in some places. And I don't think any of them are major enough changes for me to think that this team won't be once again competitive in at least most of the games that they play. And when you are that, and you have a coach who has a penchant for finding ways to win in those tight games, it's really hard not to think, okay, they're going to be able to at least rack up a few of them or be competent in those situations. And that's going to lead to wins. It's going to lead to wins. I look at, I listen to a lot of other Locked On shows, and you should too, just to get a lay of the land, right? And I hear the problems that other hosts talk about. How, well, this undrafted rookie is starting, but maybe it's going to be okay. Like that kind of stuff. And we don't really have a lot of that. There are concerns I'll get to on Wednesday, but what we have right now, the major concern of the Vikings, the biggest thing people talk about, is the thing I might be the most excited about, and it's JJ McCarthy. Everydayers know. I have been on the JJ McCarthy train since before the draft, since before I even knew he was a Viking. I thought that dude looked kind of good. And I think a big difference between me and a lot of the other draft people, because the real like deep in the draft people will also watch college football every Saturday. They will sit down and watch the entire game, and they'll see a lot of handoffs, and then they'll craft a narrative in their head about all those handoffs. And then the halftime show is talking about the narrative of those handoffs. And for me, in like everyday life, especially for people in my life who know horrifyingly what my job is, but it's that it's covering the Vikings, and they go, oh, So you're going to be handing off a lot this year because of JJ McCarthy, right? Like that's the leading thing that I hear. This is just anecdotal. That's just my own experience. But I imagine it's similar to a lot. Like that's the narrative about JJ McCarthy is that at Michigan they handed off a lot because Jim Harbaugh didn't trust him. And it couldn't be further from the truth. One of the most viewed shows in Locked On Vikings' history was the time I brought Thorne Nystrom on here to essentially debunk that narrative. And he did a great job and everybody watched it and everybody liked it. And so I'll point you to that one. And it was after the draft last year for a more fleshed out version of this argument. But if you take situations where, like, if it were true that Michigan could not trust JJ McCarthy with the football, you could isolate situations where they had to and then see how those went. And it turns out if you do that, I'm talking about 3rd and longs or 3rd and like 7 or more, right? You can't run. Like historically good, like insanely good. Or you could dispense with all of that proxy analysis and just watch the dude throw when he throws. I didn't watch him hand off a lot because I looked at cut-ups that cut the handoffs out. I don't need to see the dude hand off. I get it. He can hand off. Okay. And when you just watch the throws, you see a Sunday quarterback through and through. A guy that knows how to make most of the throws, right? That can throw with a lot of velocity everywhere, but once you get to about 20 plus, and yeah, you got some inaccuracy there. And I've been very honest about that. I saw somebody that was very good at dealing with pressure, was under pressure a lot against some really high-octane Big Ten D-lines that didn't have an easy time at all. The narrative that he was surrounded by a whole bunch of crazy talent in Michigan is insane to me. I don't know how many of those people are even on their team anymore. The best player that he threw to was Roman Wilson, who is not good. And then like maybe Colston Loveland, who was, I think, in his 2nd year in college at the time and was not great at all. He was a bozo, drops, blown blocks, the whole deal. And I didn't watch his senior year or his last year very much at all. So I don't know how different it is headed into Chicago or whatever, but that was kind of the only exposure I had. But the point is, my take, and it's a scalding hot one, I guess, is that JJ McCarthy carried Michigan when he was in college. And then, of course, we've kind of only been coasting on that for the whole last year because he's been hurt. If anybody's wondering, by the way, his knee injury cleared up in like April, or May, maybe. Like he's been good to go for a while. That's not a thing. The like concern trolling about 2 surgery stuff. If you fell for that, I'm sorry, but no, but it was never really a serious issue. At least not once the 2024 season concluded. He's very good. My favorite thing about him, I think, is how he works in the pocket, how he makes tiny little movements in the pocket to rescue throwing lanes, to rescue his O-line's angles, to make his O-line look better, aka elevating the talent around him. You saw that at Michigan. You saw that in the little bit of time we've seen him on the field in preseasons and in training camp. He still does all that. He's really good at it. That is, I think, the main point of him. And the fact that he's got a little bit of improbability if he has to, but he doesn't really like to. He would rather rescue the pocket if possible, but hey, if somebody's coming and he's got to bail out and make a play, he can do that and has done that. He has very good arm velocity. Again, people say he didn't have a strong arm, probably because they looked at deep ball percentage and their brains have been melted by fantasy football. So you don't actually get a serious quarterback analysis. They're just saying, he missed some deep balls, must not have a good arm. He has an insane arm. He can rip it. You don't need to start arguing about like radar guns, which he did a really good radar gun at his pro day or whatever. You don't even need to cite that because that's a bunk test in my opinion. You just watch him. I'm begging you to just watch him, please. I'm begging you to watch him throw passes and then evaluate that. And once you do that, you will be happy with what you see. He ended camp this year. He had a pretty good camp. There were ups and downs and there were learning moments, as Kevin O'Connell would always put it. And this feeling from reporters who were there that he was looking pretty good, that this is a serious starting level quarterback, and we'll see how he does when the bullets really start flying for real. You know, he'll miss one or there'll be an interception here or there, and he's still young and he'll learn from it and try to not make the same mistake twice, and that's what camp is for. But he never really had a day where you're like, whoa, that was concerning. He did have days where you were like, oh my God, he's dealing. You would see tweets from Alec Lewis that were like, JJ McCarthy's on fire, and Kevin Seifert saying, 7 for 7 in the red zone drills with 4 touchdowns. Like these days where it just seemed like he was operating on a higher plane of existence than everybody else. And the last day of public training camp, the last day open to fans and media that could be like really truly reported on, was the second day of joint practices with the New England Patriots that went so hard in the Vikings' favor in all phases that Mike Vrabel put the starters out in the preseason to get the kinks worked out. That was killing it. So what I've seen is, to expect perfection would be naive, and you're not getting total perfect, complete every pass, everything is perfect. Nobody does that, right? And if people are asking, well, why is he not perfect? I think that they're already just Ohio State fans that have a point that they want to try to make to you. But you haven't seen that day where like, oh no, oh God, this is horrible, right? You've seen that day with other young quarterbacks, and sometimes it doesn't even matter for them, right? That they can work it out and they're young and they learn. But you haven't really had that much to overcome with JJ McCarthy this camp. You have had the days where he takes over, where he has, every day he would complete a really nice, awesome rainbow pass to Jordan Addison. This is, I'm running out of time to talk about just JJ McCarthy because there's a lot more about this team that I like, that I want to talk about. But I need to make it really clear that I believe in JJ McCarthy. And if he shows up in real seasons and he sucks and he fails out really bad, look, this is a daily podcast. We will have lots of time to talk about it after the fact, and I'll talk about what fooled me, why I got it wrong. I do that all the time with draft takes. Again, every day is no. But the point I am saying is, at least for my money, I really buy that JJ McCarthy is the kind of quarterback he needs to be. And a big part of that argument is that the kind of quarterback he needs to be isn't a world beater necessarily because of the talent around him. That's going to be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is back, and there's nothing better than being in the stadium when the Skol chant is going, the sound is reverberating off of the glass windows of US Bank Stadium, the lights are flickering as players come out of the tunnel. It's electric. If you haven't done it, you got to try. And if you're looking to save a couple bucks, try Game Time. It gives the advantage of ticket buying back to fans. You don't have to worry about the frustrating stuff that a lot of ticket companies will do, like jump prices at checkout, reiterating login screens, big queues, and all that stuff. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. And plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. And if something does go wrong, which it has for me in the past, they were really great about making sure I got my refund and I was satisfied. The refund had happened before the event had even concluded. That is a true story. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And there's a can't-miss offer for NFL kickoff, which is this week. I remind you, right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And right now, some of the lines on the Vikings are kind of insane. In particular, Justin Jefferson's over-under at FanDuel right now is at 1250.5. This is the lowest that Justin Jefferson's preseason over-under has ever been. The lowest it has ever been. In fact, looking at Justin Jefferson's previous seasons, the only time he didn't hit this was the year that he missed 8 games with his hamstring injury. He still got over 1,000, so he got close. He's 96.5 yards per game on average over his career. If you take that and proxy it out, it would take him 13 games to hit this. If you think that kind of thing will happen, you could put $5 on it, and if you win, you get $300 in bonus bets or something else that'll maybe resolve a little bit quicker. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Before we move on with the Locked On Vikings podcast, real quick, there is a survey in the show notes I would love for you to take if you can. That's will really help the network out. Here's the thing. Outside of JJ McCarthy, who I very much believe in, the chief uncertainty of the Vikings is about JJ McCarthy, right? And stuff like Justin Jefferson's over-under in receiving yardage being as low as it is probably because people don't know if his quarterback's going to be any good or not. And so it's tempered, right? Or maybe they're overreacting to a hamstring injury that he dealt with through a lot of camp. He's past that hamstring injury. He's been full go for a couple of weeks now, or he will have been full go for a couple of weeks by the time they take the field. So there's no reason to believe that he's in any risk of missing week 1. I should also mention, by the way, that Jalen Naylor is also looks optimistic for week 1 per a report from, I believe it was Pelissero, or no, it's from Jeremy Fowler. He's day-to-day with his hand injury, had a little procedure, but it seems like he's in a pretty good spot for week 1. So that also helps out a lot. It might actually be, if he's day-to-day, it could end up being clutch that it's a Monday Night Football game. And that kind of brings me to the next major point that I want to make about the Vikings, which is that the talent around JJ McCarthy is utterly insane, and that JJ McCarthy doesn't need to be a world beater to drive this bus. Because this is not your average Greyhound bus, okay? This is a Hummer limo. This is with all the bells and whistles. This team that the Vikings have compiled over the last 3 years, which, by the way, they did not have to tank to do, which is going to make some Chicago fans who I'm sure hate listening to me really upset. That the Vikings have a team that is widely and universally acknowledged to be a very good supporting cast. Justin Jefferson, if you want to just look at like fantasy ratings as a proxy for people's optimism about the player, which is imperfect because it's a volume game, but Justin Jefferson's the number 2 overall ADP player behind just Jamar Chase. TJ Hawkinson is the 8th highest drafted tight end. Or no, I'm sorry, 6th highest drafted tight end in Fantasy Pros. He was the 8th highest yards per game tight end last year. So that, I guess, kind of tracks. Everybody's excited about Aaron Jones. People think that Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, like nobody's questioning that running back trio or that running back duo. Jordan Addison is still 39th in average in ADP among receivers, despite being suspended for the first 3 games of the season, which will sink your ADP a lot. But once he is back, I would imagine that he ranks a lot higher than 39th among receivers in terms of just like projections. Not to mention a completely rebuilt O-line with 2 Pro Bowlers at tackle, a Pro Bowler at center, and Will Fries, who's been playing fantastically, and a first-round rookie at the different guard spots. That is a completely retooled offensive line. If one of the main problems with the Vikings last year was how their O-line fell apart at the end of the season, there is only one guy left that played in that playoff game, and he's Brian O'Neill. He is not your problem. One guy from the O-line that played in the playoff game against the Rams where Sam Darnold took 9 sacks and it was a disaster. One. It's been changed. Will it be better? Probably. I mean, there's unknowns when you have turnover and stuff, but they sure as heck are not running that one back. Then you look at the defense and the amount of talent on the defense. Jonathan Grenard seems poised for a totally breakout if he hasn't already broken out season. He did make the Pro Bowl last year. It's kind of hard to argue that it's a breakout season. He even made the NFL's top 100, but he's becoming much more of a household name than he was in Houston. Andrew Van Ginkel got 2 pick sixes last year. We're running that one back. And Dallas Turner looks poised to take a step forward. Not to mention Blake Cashman is one of the better linebackers in the league. I think he's supremely underrated. Genuinely think he is a top 10 linebacker in this league. Harrison Smith is still doing the old man hoops thing. And even though he doesn't make necessarily the most athletic plays anymore, he is still a leader in the locker room, and his impact on the defense, don't be fooled by the fact that he's maybe lost a step, because he can leave that much earlier and still make up that time. Byron Murphy is a Pro Bowler. I'm just listing the whole roster and being like Pro Bowler, Pro Bowler, Pro Bowler, Pro Bowler, or All Pro, All Pro, All Pro if you really want something a little bit more concrete, because I know the Pro Bowl isn't always the best measure, but I'm not saying guys that snuck in on idiots. Those guys all deserved their Pro Bowls. They all played great football last year, and it's running it all back with, by the way, Brian Flores, a defensive coordinator, so good that the primary narrative throughout a season is, well, what are we going to do when this guy isn't our coordinator? Because he's definitely getting a head coaching job next year, which he still has not. And there was even an article in The Athletic about the kind of ideal head coach and DC pairing, like offensive head coach and DC pairing. And the two examples that were cited by league executives were Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. They've had a little bit of success. And Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores as like, this is the thing that you want to try to build. And that's why, you know, these new offensive minded head coaches are making former head coach hires as their DCs, or even guys like Kyle Shanahan bringing in Robert Saleh, because the former head coach thing and a guy with more experience to help out the new young buck has proven to be successful. And then they point at the Vikings coaches, which I will talk more about, but just the raw talent on this team can probably take a mid-tier quarterback pretty far. We have seen mid-tier quarterbacking in Minnesota get carried pretty far by way worse rosters. But this roster's pretty gosh darn good. And for as much flack as Kwesi gets for missing on draft picks, which is definitely a fair critique, I think that critique kind of always needs to be followed up with but that roster is good though. And they got a reasonably healthy cap situation, a lot healthier than it looks with the big giant dead cap number, the big giant over the cap number for next year, but it's like all totally malleable and it's going to evaporate in a second as soon as they decide to click some buttons. And they have the room, by the way, to do that because 27, 28, 29 are totally fine. And they can basically rack up credit card debt as much as they want for forever, just like all the other teams like the Packers and Eagles and I think the Ravens are also doing. And basically anybody with a bunch of good players that they have to pay, which is the Vikings. They have a whole bunch of good players that they have to pay. So if you're a young quarterback and you're trying to get your feet wet and you're behind bookend tackles that are awesome, you're throwing to top 10 guys at like every position, you've got a top 10 play caller, JJ McCarthy does not have to be that good for the Vikings to be successful. And this is the thing I keep coming back to because I get it that like, I can't be that certain about JJ McCarthy. I believe in him. I do. And I feel good planting my flag on that. But I'm wording it that way on purpose because you just never know what you don't know in the NFL. The NFL has humbled me enough where I know that like I will just be dead wrong all the time. And maybe this is one of those times. I have no way of knowing. If I did, I would probably be a professional sports scrambler instead of a podcaster. And y'all know how good of a rambler I am if you watch the Squad Show. I'm not good. So like I'm not a good predictor. And I never have been. I feel good about this take, but I have to be humble about it. But even being humble about it, like how bad does JJ McCarthy have to be for this team to not go far? Throwing to Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson behind that O-line with this defense that's been top 5, top 10 every year of Brian Flores. How is it not going to work? Tell me the way that it doesn't work without some super extreme thing happening or telling me, well, all the good players get injured, which can happen to anybody. That kind of feels like the only way. If these guys are all healthy and they suck, like, then I guess F me, I suck then too. And I guess I just have to eat that. But these are all guys that have a proven track record of playing really, really, really good football. They're one of the older rosters in the league. And people have sort of used that as a way to disparage the Vikings. Oh my God, they're all old. They're going to be slow. They're going to be bad, you know, and also like they don't have a future or whatever, which I think is insane. There was actually a Town Hall Tuesday thing. It was like a hot take from a guy like adding up the p-value of all of the like age averages across the team and how the standard deviation in average age is about half of a year, and found that the actual impact of age over the last few years has been like basically nothing, and it's a complete randomness. Old rosters make it, young rosters make it. Well, the Vikings have an experienced roster. Can I put it that way? They have an experienced roster where they have veteran players who know what they're doing at all the positions where it helps the young players who might not. That is a formula that has worked a lot in the NFL. Will it be hard to put together? Maybe. But hey, when somebody like Ryan Kelly leaves, they also feel like they have Michael Juergens in the back. And if you want to know more about how Michael Juergens maybe projects as a future starter, like the team has sort of softly implied that he could be, check out patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL, where I did a big long video just about that, about Michael Juergens and his tape, and can he really be a future starter Spoiler alert, I really took a deep look at the 2 preseason games he played, and I liked a lot of what I saw. So if you're looking for a little appetizer, something to hold you over until the real football begins, go check that out at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. I've already talked a little bit about the reputation of the coaches of Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell, but what those guys actually bring to the team is also a huge part of projecting success for the Vikings. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. If you're fantasy-brained, check out Yahoo Fantasy. Whether you are a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league, season kicks off this Thursday, so now is the time, if you haven't already, to put your league together and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. Everybody is researching, drafting, and building their championship squad, so if you haven't joined a league yet, check it out. And if you're bored or just not interested in the classic redraft version, there are way more ways to play. Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. I'm trying that one for the first time this year on Yahoo. If you want to play instantly with friends, you can try the new Draft with Friends mode. If you prefer the classics, you can get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. Or, if you'd rather, no crew, no problem, join a public league. It's the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off this Thursday, September 4th. So don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. This episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth. So whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, or whatever, you need somewhere where you can track your spending, your savings, your investments, your growth, and maybe even set some real financial goals and start to work toward it. That is what Monarch Money is for. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can lift all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get a smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. If you have subscriptions, this happens to everybody, right? You subscribe to something, you forget about it, you're paying for it for like 3 years. Monarch Money can kind of round all those up and put them in front of you and make you really decide whether you should still be paying for that. And it helps you track your budgeting. So if you're trying to cut back somewhere, it can identify areas where it would be effective. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LockedOnNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LockedOnNFL. Moving along with the Locked On Vikings podcast. So the last point I want to make is about the coaching, right? I believe in JJ McCarthy. Even if you don't believe in JJ McCarthy, the talent around him is absurd. And even if you lose a bunch of that talent, this coaching staff has proven that not only can they get the job done, they can get the job done with depleted rosters. It's happened on both sides of the ball. Brian Flores has made water into wine on defense. There have been great developmental stories like Ivan Pace or even Jalen Redmond, who is poised for a step up this year. But there have also been times where he's taken a lot of reclamation project in corners like Shaq Griffin, who did not make the team the next year and got a reasonable season out of him, or Stephon Gilmore, who's still not on a team and got a reasonable season out of him. Isaiah Rodgers is a hand-picked Brian Flores corner. You know how I really feel about the corners, but this is the part where I'm presenting the argument. The argument is that Brian Flores handpicked Isaiah Rodgers. The reporters and Kevin O'Connell even publicly said, hey, every year there's a couple of guys that Brian Flores is like, bring me him. He's the next dude. And Isaiah Rodgers is that one. And it looks like this is paid off in camp. He's had a really, really nice camp for as much as he played. He did miss a little bit of it with an injury. They've even gotten Jeff Okudah to look halfway decent. He's got a long track record of making players, even going before his days in Minnesota. He got a pretty good defense out of the 2019 actively tanking Miami Dolphins. Like, there's litigation over it. They were tanking Miami Dolphins, and he actually got that defense playing pretty good. He has made something out of nothing a lot. And it's not like he has nothing. I just went over all of the defensive talent that there is. There are so many players that come to Minnesota, have career years, and then do jack all elsewhere. This has been the case for the Vikings for a long time, even before O'Connell and Flores. There's been a lot of Like every once in a while, I'll get a question that's like, why does it seem like every time somebody leaves the Vikings, then they break out, like as if we're holding them all back. And the opposite could not be more true. There are so many times when somebody like Armon Watts pushes to start here and then can't make a team somewhere else. And it's not like those teams are better rosters than the Vikings necessarily. It's just that there is such a clear vision in Minnesota for what to do with all these players that moving outside it, guys don't necessarily have the same level of success. But I can go even deeper. The Kevin O'Connell scheme has been praised up and down by basically anybody who knows anything in the NFL circle, from guys like me and like podcasters and TikTokers and stuff that were just opining, and people with like real pedigrees and real resumes, and Brian Baldingers and JT O'Sullivans and people that are understood to be like really good knowers of offense, or like pick your former backup quarterback turned YouTuber. People that know offense go, man, this Kevin O'Connell scheme really makes sense. And it's not just that it's, really devious, tricky tricks on the whiteboard. No, it's just that everything works in concert really well together. The dropbacks are the right choice. The routes pair well the way that they're supposed to. Everything, one release goes this way and it's exactly the way it needs to go to manipulate that defender to make that route easier. And every little detail is motivated. Everything has its reason. And that makes for, as long as you can just like execute your thing properly, you don't need to be the most talented guy in the league. You can be Brandon Powell and get open all the time. You can be Josh Dobbs. And as long as you can like throw stick and slants the way that you've been able to your whole career, you can make it happen. You can make offense happen here. The illusion of complexity is a phrase that stems from Sean McVay, but that Kevin O'Connell has said a lot in his time here. And unfortunately, his first attempt at that was the Donatel thing, which was a big fail. But on the offensive side of the ball, I think they've really managed to successfully embody that idea, where on defense, there's a lot of little stupid things that make it really hard to find tendencies, and whether they do this out of a bunch or a stack or 2x2 or 3x1, or whether the back is in a strong side offset or a weak side offset, or whether the tight end is in line or in the bunch, all of those little details are really difficult for defenses to read. For offenses, everything works the same no matter where you line up. So it's hard to tell what they're doing, but it's not hard for the offense to figure out what it is doing. And one thing that I really noticed in the preseason, for whatever this is worth to you, but in the preseason, even the backups and guys that aren't going to make the team really had it together. And the only time they didn't was kind of a famous moment where Kevin O'Connell was live on the VEN broadcast and was reacting to a procedural penalty that Miles Price had, and then a sub error that also involved Miles Price. So like that specific guy had some issues. And we'll see how that goes as a punt returner. But boy, when you're talking about one guy that turns out to be wide receiver 6, who is an undrafted rookie, and like he's the one making mistakes, nobody ran the wrong route, but for like 2 times. Nobody screwed up. There weren't like busted protections where no, these quarterbacks, even undrafted rookie Max Brosmer, were dropping back, delivering the ball where they were supposed to deliver it, and the timing was pretty polished. It looked polished, whether it was backups or when the starters did have their one drive against the Houston Texans, that looked pretty polished too. It's a well-coached team, and it's a well-coached team on defense too. They were doing like good zone pass-offs between Khalif Hailasi and Austin Keys, the latter of which made the team. It was the L's that they would take would be maybe in man coverage, or guys that would ultimately get cut, just not quite having the talent to keep up with the guy across from them. But in terms of the mental ability to just execute the play the way they were supposed to execute it, it looked really nice. There's still a contingent of people from the Miami world who haven't really paid attention to the Vikings at all, that still understand Brian Flores to be this like horrifying dictator, like he was, kind of got the reputation for being in Miami. And how much of that was actually true or a smear campaign because of the lawsuit, I'm not going to get into, but it's probably worth mentioning. But these players buy into him a ton. I'll never forget the moment when like a very smeary article came out about him, mostly about his time in Miami, if I recall. And Harrison Phillips and Josh Metellus came out to Brian Flores' press conference that day and flanked him. And it was, and like Brian Flores didn't ask him to do that. He was like, I didn't know they were doing this. They flanked him, stood behind him and said, we support our coach. We love our coach. Metellus just signed a big giant extension to stay here, by the way. He's another guy that's poised to take a big step up with his very versatile and difficult to pin down role. And also the kind of guy that, like, if you aren't specifically with Brian Flores and you don't know how to do this with him, I don't know if you get the same value, because the coaches are good, the players are good, and they know what to do about it. I look at other teams that are, the projected to be these big contenders, and I ask, who's their Justin Jefferson? Who's their Christian Darrisaw? I think of a team like the Eagles, I think has good answers to these questions, but everybody does not. Who's your Jonathan Grenard? Who's your Blake Cashman? Do you feel good about your quarterback? Because damn, I do. And I feel good about just about everything else that's going on around him. Does that mean there's no concerns? Of course not. And on Wednesday, I'll go over them in a lot of detail. You guys probably aren't going to like that show, but I'm going to do it. But there are a lot more reasons to be stoked than there are to be worried. And it's a matter of like which ones turn out to be true. But if all of those reasons to be optimistic or pessimistic were ping pong balls that went into like an NBA draft style lottery, the Vikings have a lot more good ping pong balls than bad ones. I think that's worth feeling good about. I'll see you tomorrow. And as always, Skol.